The fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room buzzed overhead as Emma Rodriguez clutched her swollen belly, tears streaming down her face. At 8 months pregnant, she should have been preparing a nursery with her fiancé. Instead, she was alone, staring at a text message that would haunt her forever. "I'm sorry, Emma. I can't do this anymore. Victoria needs me. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 3 years. 3 years of building a life with Michael Harrison, the golden boy of Harrison Medical Devices, heir to a fortune that could buy small countries. 3 years of believing she was enough, that their love could conquer anything. How wrong she had been. Emma's story began in the most unlikely place, a coffee shop near Northwestern University, where she worked double shifts to pay for her nursing degree. She was 22, exhausted from pulling an all-nighter studying for her pediatric care certification, when Michael Harrison walked through the door like he owned the world. Which, considering his family's net worth, he practically did. Large black coffee, no sugar, he ordered, not even looking up from his phone. His designer suit probably cost more than Emma's entire semester tuition. "Coming right up," Emma replied, noting his expensive watch and the way other customers seemed to recognize him. She'd seen his face in the university newspaper, star of the business program, captain of the rowing team, and according to campus gossip, engaged to Victoria Sterling, the dean's daughter whose family owned half the real estate in Chicago. But that morning, something was different about Michael Harrison. His usual confidence seemed cracked, his jaw tense. When Emma handed him his coffee, their fingers brushed, and for the first time he actually looked at her. "Thank you," he said, his voice softer than she expected. "I'm Michael, Emma," she smiled, despite herself. "You look like you've had a rough morning." He laughed bitterly. "Try a rough year." He paused, studying her face. "You're in the nursing program, aren't you? I've seen you in the library." What Emma didn't know was that Michael had been watching her for weeks. While she thought their meeting was chance, he'd been deliberately coming to her coffee shop, timing his visits to coincide with her shifts. He was already engaged to Victoria Sterling, a union arranged by their families to merge two medical empires. But Emma's genuine warmth was a stark contrast to Victoria's cold calculation. Their first real conversation lasted 20 minutes. Michael told her about the pressure of family expectations, how his father William Harrison had his entire life mapped out: business school, marriage to Victoria, taking over the company. Emma shared her dreams of working in pediatric oncology, helping children fight battles too big for their small bodies. "That's beautiful," Michael said, and for the first time in months, he meant something completely. What followed was a whirlwind courtship that Emma believed was genuine. Michael would pick her up after her nursing clinicals in his Porsche, take her to expensive restaurants where she felt out of place among Chicago's elite. He bought her designer dresses, expensive jewelry, and most importantly, he listened when she talked about her patients, her dreams, her fears about her mountain of student debt. "I want to take care of you," he told her one night, as they sat overlooking Lake Michigan from his penthouse apartment. "You shouldn't have to work 3 jobs just to survive." Emma had grown up in a working-class family in Pilsen. Her father was a mechanic, her mother a school secretary. They'd sacrificed everything to help her through college, and the idea of not struggling financially anymore was intoxicating. But it wasn't just the money. Michael made her feel special, chosen, like she was the only woman in the world. 6 months into their relationship, Michael broke up with Victoria in a very public scene at the university's annual gala. Emma wasn't there to witness it, but according to campus gossip, Victoria had thrown her champagne glass at him before storming out in tears. "I told her about us," Michael explained later that night. "I couldn't keep living a lie. My family is furious, but I don't care. I choose you, Emma. I choose love." Emma believed him. She believed every word. They moved in together after her graduation. Michael's penthouse became their penthouse. He paid off her student loans without blinking, bought her a new car, insisted she take the nursing position at Chicago Children's Hospital even though it paid less than other offers. Because it was her dream. Money isn't everything, he told her. Following your passion is. For 2 years, Emma lived in a fairy tale. Michael was attentive, loving, and supportive. He attended every hospital function, charmed her colleagues, and even got along with her parents despite their obvious discomfort with his wealth. When he proposed on her 25th birthday with a ring that could have funded a small clinic, Emma said yes without hesitation. The cracks began to show during wedding planning. Michael's mother, Patricia Harrison, made her disapproval clear with every passive-aggressive comment about Emma's simple background and quaint family traditions. William Harrison was more direct, offering Emma a check for $2 million to reconsider this unfortunate situation. "Dad's just being protective," Michael assured her. "He'll come around once he sees how happy you make me." But Emma noticed Michael becoming distant during family gatherings, how he'd apologize for her education, her job, even her accent. The confident man who'd chosen love over duty was slowly transforming back into the obedient son. The final blow came when Victoria Sterling returned from her year studying abroad in London. Suddenly, Michael's phone was constantly buzzing with messages. Business dinners ran later. Weekend trips to check on company acquisitions became frequent. "She's just helping with some family business," Michael explained when Emma found Victoria's name appearing dozens of times in his call log. "Her family's hotels are partnering with our medical centers. It's purely professional." Emma wanted to believe him. She was 3 months pregnant by then, glowing with the joy of carrying their first child. Michael had been ecstatic about the pregnancy, talking about nursery colors and baby names, promising to be the father he'd never had. But Victoria Sterling wasn't content with just business partnerships. She began showing up at their apartment unannounced, claiming she needed to discuss urgent family matters with Michael. She'd arrive looking stunning in designer outfits that cost more than most people's cars, her platinum blonde hair perfectly styled, her blue eyes cold as Arctic ice. "Oh, Emma," Victoria would say with a smile that never reached her eyes. "How lovely to see you. Pregnancy suits you in such an authentic way." The insults were always wrapped in concern, delivered with the practiced precision of someone raised in Chicago's social elite. Victoria would comment on Emma's brave choice to keep working while pregnant, her interesting maternity clothes from Target instead of designer boutiques, her refreshing decision to use the smaller guest bedroom as a nursery instead the master suite. "Michael and I always planned to use the master suite for our children's nursery," Victoria mentioned casually one evening. "Of course, that was back when we were engaged. Plans change, don't they?" Emma felt each comment like a small cut, but Michael seemed oblivious. Or worse, he was choosing to ignore it. At 6 months pregnant, Emma discovered the truth by accident. She'd forgotten her hospital ID badge and returned home unexpectedly to find Victoria in Michael's arms in their kitchen, kissing him with the passion of someone reclaiming what was rightfully hers. "Michael," Emma gasped, her hand instinctively protecting her growing belly. They broke apart like guilty teenagers. Victoria's lipstick was smeared. Michael's shirt wrinkled. "Emma, this isn't what it looks like," Michael stammered, but his words were hollow. "Actually, it's exactly what it looks like," Victoria said, straightening her hair with practiced composure. "Michael, tell her. She deserves to know the truth." The truth, as it turned out, was devastating. Michael and Victoria had been reconnecting for months. Their families had been pressuring them to reconcile, threatening to cut Michael off financially if he didn't correct his mistake. Victoria had convinced him that Emma was just a phase, a rebellion against his destiny. "I never stopped loving her," Michael confessed that night, as Emma packed her bags. "I tried to love you, Emma. I really did. But Victoria and I were meant to be together. Our families, our backgrounds, our future, it all makes sense with her." "What about our baby?" Emma whispered, her hands cradling her belly. "I'll support the child financially," Michael said, as if he were discussing a business transaction. "But I can't pretend anymore. I can't marry you when my heart belongs to someone else." Emma moved back in with her parents. sleeping in her childhood bedroom surrounded by nursing school textbooks and faded posters. The contrast to the penthouse was jarring, but the emotional devastation was worse. Michael's family lawyers sent papers terminating his parental rights, offering a substantial settlement in exchange for Emma's silence about the relationship. At 7 months pregnant, Emma learned that Michael and Victoria had rekindled their engagement. The society pages couldn't get enough of the reunion of Chicago's golden couple, complete with an exclusive interview where Victoria discussed her forgiveness of Michael's temporary lapse in judgment. "Everyone makes mistakes in their 20s, Victoria told Chicago magazine. "The important thing is that Michael came to his senses and chose what was right for our families and our future." The final humiliation came at 8 months pregnant. Emma was at her routine checkup when she saw them, Michael and Victoria at the same medical center, touring the private maternity wing. Victoria was glowing, her hand resting on a barely visible bump beneath her designer dress. "We're so excited," Victoria was telling the nurse. "Michael insisted on the best care for our baby." Emma ducked into a bathroom and sobbed until she couldn't breathe. Not only had Michael abandoned her and their child, but he was already starting a new family with Victoria. Their child would grow up knowing that their father had chosen another woman's baby over them. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. That's when Emma's phone buzzed with the text that shattered what remained of her heart. "I'm sorry, Emma. I can't do this anymore. Victoria needs me." Attached was a photo of an ultrasound. Victoria was 12 weeks pregnant. Michael had gotten his ex-fiancée pregnant while Emma was carrying his first child. Sitting in that hospital bathroom, 8 months pregnant and utterly alone, Emma felt something break inside her that she was certain could never be repaired. The fairy tale was over. The prince had chosen another princess and Emma was left with nothing but debt, heartbreak and a baby whose father would never acknowledge them. As she struggled to stand, her reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a woman she barely recognized, swollen, exhausted, and defeated. The confident nursing student who'd once dreamed of saving children's lives had been reduced to a cautionary tale about trusting men above your station. Emma closed her eyes and made a wish that felt more like a prayer. "If I could do it all over again, I would never trust Michael Harrison. I would never let him break my heart. I would choose myself first." The last thing she remembered before the world went dark was the sound of her own heartbeat, slowing, fading, as if her body was finally giving up the fight she'd been fighting for months. But sometimes, the universe listens to the prayers of broken hearts. Sometimes we get second chances. The first thing Emma noticed was the smell coffee and vanilla, not the sterile hospital scent she expected. Her eyes fluttered open to sunlight streaming through familiar windows, casting shadows across textbooks scattered on a desk she hadn't seen in years. Her childhood bedroom. Emma bolted upright, her hand instinctively flying to her stomach, expecting the heavy weight of 8 months pregnancy. Instead, she found only the flat surface of her 22-year-old body. Confused, she stumbled to the mirror hanging on her closet door. The reflection staring back at her was impossible. Gone were the dark circles under her eyes, the exhausted expression of a woman who'd been betrayed and broken. Instead, she saw herself at 22, bright-eyed, hopeful, wearing the Northwestern University nursing program t-shirt she'd gotten during orientation week. "This isn't possible," Emma whispered, touching her face with trembling fingers. The skin was smooth, unmarked by the stress lines that had appeared during those horrible final months with Michael. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, and Emma's heart stopped when she saw the date. September 15, 2019. 3 years ago. The exact day she was supposed to start her shift at Bean Their coffee shop, the day she would meet Michael Harrison for the first time. "Emma, honey, you're going to be late for work," her mother's voice called from downstairs. Maria Rodriguez's voice sounded younger, happier. Emma remembered this period, before the stress of watching her daughter get involved with a man who would ultimately destroy her. Before the medical bills from Emma's complicated pregnancy that had drained their savings. Before the shame of having their daughter return home, abandoned and broken. Emma sat heavily on her twin bed, mind reeling. Everything felt real. The scratchy comforter her mother had bought on clearance, the stack of nursing textbooks that had cost her 3 months of ramen noodle dinners, even the small scar on her hand from when she'd cut herself opening a can last week. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Michael Harrison wasn't there. Victoria Sterling wasn't there. The only numbers belonged to her family, her few college friends, and her manager at the coffee shop. "I'm dreaming," Emma said aloud. "I have to be dreaming," but the cool September air coming through her cracked window felt too real. The sounds of her father getting ready for his early shift at the auto shop too familiar. If this was a dream, it was the most vivid one she'd ever experienced. Emma's laptop was exactly where she'd left it 3 years ago. Password still the same. She opened her browser and searched for Michael Harrison Chicago. The results were identical to what she remembered. Society page photos of him with Victoria Sterling, business articles about Harrison Medical Devices expansion, university newspaper coverage of his rowing victories. But there were no photos of him with a dark-haired nursing student, no mention of a broken engagement or scandal. According to the internet, Michael Harrison was still very much engaged to Victoria Sterling, their wedding planned for the following spring. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Somehow, impossibly, she had been given a second chance. She was back at the beginning, before the coffee shop meeting that would change everything. Before the fairy tale romance that became a nightmare. Before trusting a man who would abandon her and their child for his ex-fiancé. Emma's hands shook as she grabbed her work uniform from the closet. The black polo shirt and khakis looked foreign to her now, like costumes from a play she no longer wanted to perform in. In her previous life, she'd been excited about this job, grateful for the steady income and flexible hours that worked around her class schedule. Now, knowing what she knew, the uniform felt like a trap. "Emma?" Her mother called again. "You'll miss the bus." The number 36 bus route. Emma remembered taking it every day for 8 months, until Michael started picking her up in his Porsche. She'd felt so special when he began driving her to work, like Cinderella being swept away by Prince Charming. The other nursing students had been so envious. What fools they'd all been. Emma dressed mechanically, her mind racing through possibilities. If she was truly back at the beginning, she could change everything. She could avoid Michael Harrison entirely, focus on her studies, graduate debt-free using the scholarship she'd earned through merit rather than accepting his family's money that came with invisible strings. But, as she walked downstairs to the kitchen where her mother was packing her a lunch in a reused grocery bag, Emma felt a stab of guilt. Her parents looked so young, so hoped they were proud of their daughter, the first Rodriguez to attend university, the one who would become a nurse and help people. "You look pale, Mija," Maria said, pressing the back of her hand to Emma's forehead. "Are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine, Mama," Emma replied, though nothing felt fine. How could she explain that she'd lived through 3 years of heartbreak and betrayal, only to wake up back where it all started? "Don't work too hard," her father Carlos said, kissing the top of her head before grabbing his tool belt. "Education comes first, remember?" Carlos Rodriguez had worked double shifts for 2 years to help pay for Emma's college expenses. In her previous timeline, Michael's money had seemed like a blessing, relieving the financial pressure on her family. Now Emma understood. It had been a golden cage, making her dependent on a man who would ultimately discard her. The bus ride to campus gave Emma time to think. She watched familiar faces, fellow students she'd lost touch with after becoming consumed by her relationship with Michael. Professors whose classes she'd eventually missed because of social events and trips that seemed so important at the time. Northwestern University looked exactly the same, but Emma felt like an alien visiting a planet she'd once called home. Students rushed past with the urgency of youth, believing their choices would lead to happiness and success. Emma wanted to warn them all, be careful who you trust, don't sacrifice your dreams for anyone, and never believe a man who promises you the world while keeping one foot in another woman's life. Bean There coffee shop sat on the corner of Sherman and Clark, a cozy space filled with mismatched furniture and the constant hum of espresso machines. Emma had loved working here in her original timeline, at least until Michael Harrison walked through the door. "Emma," called Jessica Chin, the assistant manager. "Perfect timing. We just got a huge order from the business school, and Sarah called in sick." Jessica was a graduate student in social work, kind and patient with the undergraduate employees. In Emma's previous life, Jessica had been genuinely happy when Emma quit to focus on her relationship with Michael. She'd even attended the engagement party, bringing a thoughtful gift despite her own student budget. "No problem," Emma replied, tying her apron with practiced efficiency. Muscle memory kicked in as she moved behind the counter, checking the espresso machine temperature and restocking cups. Everything was exactly as she remembered, down to the quirky regular customers who ordered the same drinks every day. At 9:15 a.m., the morning rush began. Emma worked mechanically, making lattes and cappuccinos while her mind churned with possibilities. She knew Michael would arrive at 10:30 a.m., ordering his large black coffee with no sugar. She knew he'd be stressed about family pressure, vulnerable and looking for someone to listen to his problems. In her original timeline, Emma had been charmed by his vulnerability, flattered that someone so successful would confide in her. She'd seen past his wealth to what she believed was his true self. Sensitive, caring, trapped by family expectations. Now she recognized it for what it had been: manipulation, whether conscious or unconscious. Michael Harrison was a man who took what he wanted and discarded what he didn't need, regardless of the consequences to others. At 10:25 a.m., Emma made a decision that would change everything. "Jessica," she called to the assistant manager. "I need to take my break now. Can you cover the register?" "Sure, but your break isn't scheduled for another hour." "I know. I need some air." Emma untied her apron and walked out the back door into the alley behind the coffee shop. Her heart pounded as she heard the front door chime at exactly 10:30 a.m. Through the back window, she could see a familiar figure in an expensive suit approaching the counter. Michael Harrison, in all his golden boy glory, looking exactly as he had 3 years ago, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of confident stride that came from never having to worry about money or consequences. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit impeccably tailored, his watch probably worth more than her parents' annual income. From her hiding spot, Emma watched Jessica take his order. She saw Michael glance around the shop, his gaze lingering on the spot where Emma usually stood. He looked confused, maybe even disappointed. "Excuse me," she heard him say to Jessica. "There's usually a girl who works the morning shift, dark hair. About this tall?" "Oh, you mean Emma? She's on break right now. I can get her if you'd like." "No," Michael said quickly. "No, that's fine. Just the coffee." Emma stayed hidden until she saw him leave, walking past the alley without seeing her crouched behind the dumpster. Only when his figure disappeared around the corner did she allow herself to breathe. She had done it. She had avoided the meeting that would destroy her life. But as Emma walked back into the coffee shop, she felt no triumph, only a strange hollowness. She had just changed the course of her entire existence, potentially saving herself years of heartbreak and betrayal. So why did she feel like she had lost something precious instead of avoiding a terrible mistake? "Where did you go?" Jessica asked. "That guy was asking about you." "Just needed some air," Emma replied, retying her apron with shaking hands. "What guy?" "Tall, handsome, expensive suit. Looked like he wanted to ask you something." Emma forced a smile. "Probably just wondering where his regular barista went." You know how customers get attached to routine. But even as she said it, Emma knew that Michael Harrison would be back. Men like him didn't give up easily, especially when they encountered something unexpected. Her absence would make her more intriguing, not less. The question was, how long could she keep avoiding the inevitable? And more importantly, did she really want to? 5 years after her rebirth, Dr. Emma Rodriguez stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office at Chicago Children's Hospital, watching the sunrise paint the city skyline in shades of gold and pink. The view from the 20th floor still took her breath away, not because of its beauty, but because of how far she'd traveled to earn the right to see it. At 27, Emma had achieved everything she'd dreamed of in her previous life, and more. The brass nameplate on her door read, Dr. Emma Rodriguez, MD, Director of Pediatric Oncology Innovation. Behind her, the walls were covered with medical degrees from Johns Hopkins, certificates of achievement, and photos of her with the children whose lives she'd saved through her groundbreaking research. Her phone buzzed with a text from her research partner and husband, Dr. David Kim. Morning rounds start at 20. The Martinez family wants to thank you personally for Sophia's successful treatment. Bring tissues, happy tears guaranteed. Emma smiled, her hand instinctively moving to her wedding ring, a simple platinum band that meant more to her than any diamond ever could. David was everything Michael Harrison had pretended to be. Brilliant, kind, supportive, and genuinely committed to making the world better through medicine. They'd met during her residency at Johns Hopkins, where Emma had earned a full scholarship based on her innovative thesis about childhood cancer treatments. David was a pediatric surgeon from a humble background. His parents owned a small restaurant in Koreatown, and he'd been immediately drawn to Emma's passion for healing rather than her appearance or social status. Their courtship had been built on shared 3 a.m. coffee breaks during brutal residency schedules, collaborative research projects, and a mutual understanding that their careers came first, relationships second. When David proposed after Emma's fellowship, it was in the hospital cafeteria where they'd shared countless conversations about their dreams. I want to build something real with you, he'd said, holding a ring box that contained a stone he'd saved for 8 months to afford. Not because you complete me, but because we're both complete people who choose to share our completeness. Emma had said yes without hesitation. Knowing this was what real love felt like, partnership, respect, and genuine admiration for each other's minds and hearts. A knock on her office door interrupted her memories. Come in, Emma called. Her assistant Rebecca poked her head inside. Dr. Rodriguez, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important. Michael Harrison? Emma's blood went cold for just a moment before her professional composure took over. She'd known this day would eventually come. Michael had tried to contact her several times over the years, first through her parents, then through mutual acquaintances from Northwestern, and finally through professional channels when her medical achievements started making headlines. She'd ignored every attempt. Send him in, Emma said calmly. But please stay close in case I need you to call security. Rebecca's eyebrows shot up, but she nodded and disappeared. A moment later, Michael Harrison walked into Emma's office, and the sight of him was like looking at a ghost from another lifetime. He looked older, tired around the edges in a way that expensive suits couldn't hide. His hair was still perfectly styled, his watch still worth more than most people's cars, but there was something hollow in his eyes that hadn't been there during their university days. Emma, he said, his voice carrying a mix of awe and uncertainty. Congratulations on all of this. He gestured around her office. Director of Pediatric Oncology Innovation. That's incredible. Thank you, Emma replied coolly, remaining behind her desk. What do you want, Michael? He moved closer, and Emma noticed the slight tremor in his hands, stress perhaps or something stronger. I wanted to apologize for everything. I know it's been years, but I never forgot how I treated you. What I did was inexcusable. Emma studied his face, seeing past the practiced charm to the desperation underneath. What happened to Victoria? Michael's expression crumbled. We divorced 2 years ago. The marriage it wasn't what either of us thought it would be. We were both trying to please our families instead of following our hearts. And now you're following your heart here. Emma's tone was arctic. I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go, Michael said, his voice gaining strength. I've been thinking about you constantly, wondering what would have happened if I'd chosen differently. When I saw your picture in Medical Journal Quarterly, when I read about your research saving hundreds of children's lives, Emma, you became everything I always knew you could be. Yes, Emma said simply. I did. Michael took another step forward. I know I have no right to ask, but I want another chance. I want to prove that I've changed, that I can be the man you deserved. Emma stood up, her full height making her presence commanding in a way that surprised Michael. The uncertain nursing student he remembered had been replaced by a confident woman who commanded respect in one of the most challenging medical fields. "Michael," Emma said, her voice gentle but firm. "I need you to understand something. You didn't let me go. You abandoned me when I was 8 months pregnant with your child because you decided your ex-fiancé was a better investment for your future." Michael's face went white. "Pregnant? Emma, you were never—" "In another timeline, another life. Yes, I was." Emma's smile was sad but not bitter. "You don't remember because it never happened in this reality. I made different choices. Better choices." She walked around her desk, maintaining professional distance. "You want to know what I learned? That the version of love you offered me wasn't love at all. It was possession. You wanted to own something pure and genuine because it made you feel better about yourself. But when it became inconvenient, when your family applied pressure, you traded me in for a more suitable model." "That's not," Michael started, but Emma held up a hand. "You want another chance? I've given you one. I chose not to pursue a relationship with you 5 years ago, which allowed you to marry Victoria as originally planned. That was your chance to build the life you thought you wanted." Michael's composure finally cracked. "But I don't want that life. I want you. Emma, I've spent years regretting my choices. My marriage was miserable. Victoria and I brought out the worst in each other. I have money, status, everything I was supposed to want, but I'm empty inside." "That's not my problem to solve," Emma replied. "And it's certainly not my responsibility to fix your regrets." The door opened, and David walked in carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing scrubs. He took in the scene immediately, his wife's tense posture, the well-dressed stranger who was clearly agitated. "Sorry, I didn't realize you were in a meeting," David said, setting 1 coffee cup on Emma's desk before positioning himself subtly between her and Michael. "David, this is Michael Harrison," Emma said. "Michael, my husband, Dr. David Kim." Michael looked between them, taking in David's protective stance, the easy intimacy of shared coffee, the way Emma's shoulders relaxed when David entered the room. "Your husband," Michael repeated, as if the words didn't compute. 2 years now," David said pleasantly, but his tone carried an unmistakable warning. "Emma's told me about you. All bad things. I'm sure," Michael said bitterly. "Actually, she rarely mentions you at all," David replied. "Which should tell you something." The truth of David's words hit Michael like a physical blow. In his mind, he'd built up his relationship with Emma as the great love story of his life. The one that got away. To discover that she'd moved on so completely that she barely thought about him was devastating. "Emma," Michael said desperately, "surely what we had meant something to you. The connection we shared was based on an illusion," Emma interrupted. "You were attracted to my authenticity because it was exotic to you. I was attracted to your confidence because I confused it with strength. Neither of those things constitute a foundation for real love." She gestured toward David. "This is what real love looks like. Partnership, mutual respect, shared values. Someone who celebrates my successes instead of feeling threatened by them. Someone who chooses me every day, not just when it's convenient." Michael's facade finally shattered completely. "So that's it? 5 years of what we built together means nothing?" "5 years?" Emma laughed, but not unkindly. "Michael, we dated for 8 months when we were barely adults. In that time, you paid my bills, bought me things, and made me feel special, but you never truly knew me. And I never truly knew you. We were playing roles in each other's fantasies." She picked up her coffee, a signal that the conversation was ending. "I hope you find peace with your choices. I hope you find someone who genuinely loves you for who you are, not what you represent. But that person isn't me, and it never was." Michael stood there for a long moment, seeming to age years in seconds. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I guess I always knew this was a long shot. I had to try." "I understand," Emma said, But this is goodbye, Michael. Please don't contact me again. After Michael left, David wrapped his arms around Emma from behind, and she leaned into his solid warmth. You okay? He murmured into her hair. More than okay, Emma replied, meaning it completely. Ready for rounds? As they walked through the pediatric ward together, Emma reflected on the strange journey that had brought her here. Her rebirth had given her the chance to rewrite her story. But the real triumph wasn't avoiding Michael Harrison. It was discovering who she was when she wasn't trying to be someone else's dream girl. She'd saved hundreds of children's lives through her research. She'd built a marriage based on genuine partnership. She'd become the woman she was meant to be, not the woman someone else wanted her to become. The little girl in room 314 squealed with delight when Emma entered, arms outstretched for a hug that her parents had once feared they'd never see. Dr. Emma, I'm going home tomorrow. I know, Sophia, Emma said, kneeling to the child's level. How does it feel to be cancer-free? Like I can do anything, Sophia declared with the uninhibited joy that only children possessed. Emma smiled, remembering her own moment of rebirth, her own realization that she could do anything. The universe had given her a second chance, and she'd used it to become exactly who she was meant to be. Outside the hospital windows, Chicago bustled with life, full of people writing their own stories, making their own choices, learning their own lessons about love and betrayal, and redemption. Emma Rodriguez had learned the most important lesson of all. The greatest love story isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about becoming complete enough to choose love wisely. And in that wisdom, she had found everything she'd ever really wanted. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.